Hey Bliss Bunnies, Melanie here, Experiments in Bliss. Today I wanted to come to you with some information that hopefully will be helpful to at least some of you. This is not going to be applicable to everyone, but for those of you who don't know, now that I have relocated to Austin, I have been living in my car. And it's a very specific lifestyle. It's not for everybody. But for those of you who are intending or are already practicing living in your car, I have found that there are a few tips and tricks that make things much more enjoyable and much more comfortable. So I thought I would take the time to share those with you today. And on a side note, you will notice that I am really bundled up right now, and that is because it is freezing, literally, in Austin, Texas, which is a little ridiculous. But I am doing my best to stay warm. Hopefully you are too. And with no further ado, let's talk about how you can make living in your car a little more comfortable. So these are my top 10 tips for how to live in your car as comfortably and as safely as possible. Tip number 1, prepare in advance if possible. Now I know this won't be available to everyone, but if there's any way that you can do some advanced planning, it will save you so much time, discomfort, chaos, and stress. So a couple of things to note there, and you'll see me looking at my notes. Research the climate of where you're going to be going. That's going to make a huge difference as to what kind of equipment or gear you're going to need and what kind of setup is going to be most comfortable for you while you're in your car. Things like ventilation and insulation are really going to be important when you consider the climate of where you're going. Research parking and sleeping locations. You can do this in a number of different ways. There are apps that can help you. The ones that I have, let's see, one is for RV campgrounds. I think it's by AllStays. I'll try to remember to put the link down below. And then one is for parking areas. And again, I'll try to put both of those in the description box down below so that you can check them out if you're interested in them. You can also consider things like boondocking, and it's really helpful if you have some kind of advanced prep time to research where you might be able to get away with boondocking. And boondocking is just essentially staying on usually public land, preferably public land, because you don't want to stay on someone's private land without permission if you want to be as safe as possible. So, just being mindful of public spaces and what the rules are, what the legal requirements are for those places. Walmart parking lots. Now, these used to be the holy grail for people staying in their cars or vehicles of any type. These days, not every Walmart allows overnight parking, so you need to do your homework there. Check and see which ones do and which ones don't. I think here in Austin there are 2 that do. There's definitely 1. I think there might be 2, but the rest do not allow it, and they will ask you to leave. So be mindful of that. If you have time to prep in advance, again, do your homework on where you can sleep. Know the laws in the area that you're going to be going. Every city, every town, every county, every state has different laws regarding what they consider vagrancy. So you want to be really mindful of paying attention to what the laws are, how enforced they are, the way they enforce them, so that you can make sure that you're being as safe and as uninterrupted as possible. A couple of other things to think about if you have some advanced notice. And this is something that I had time to do, and I thought I had come up with something fantastic, but it ended up not working. So I strongly encourage you to really spend some time with this and really practice, like physically practice this, is to really be mindful of arranging your sleeping configuration and packing configuration in your vehicle. I came up with this brilliant on paper plan of how I was going to sleep, and it seemed awesome, and I made it all nice and stealthy. And then the first night on the road where I was trying to sleep in this configuration, I recognized it was not at all comfortable and it was not at all convenient. So I had to reconfigure on the fly, and it's a lot easier if you can plan it all out and really test it before you hit the road. And then the last thing is for pre-planning is find out what other people have done. Watch videos like this. There are tons of YouTube videos for people living in their cars. There are tons of blogs of people who have lived in their cars. And you can also look at RV and travel trailer kind of, and even minimalist backpack travelers. You can look at the things that they do to stay organized and to stay comfortable while they're on the road and while they're working with limited space and limited resources. So it can be really helpful to just see what others have done before you. Number 2, get organized. I cannot stress this enough. Now, caveat, I am a little anal retentive when it comes to organization. There's a lot of Virgo in my chart, and I live up to that. I really like things to have a place. I like to know where it is. But I can also be a little bit messy outside of that initial outline of organization. And that's the beauty of what organization allows, is you can be as messy as you want, but when you live in a small space, if you don't know where everything goes and you don't have a decided place for everything that you own or are carrying with you, then things can get really uncomfortable really fast. So organization is key. It's important to develop an organizational system too that works with your personal needs. It's a very individual thing. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for anybody else. So a little trial and error is probably going to happen when you're working with developing your system. But a couple of things to think about: space considerations, whether you like things to be open and clean, or you really enjoy that sort of cluttered, close, intimate feeling in your space. And neither is wrong or right. It's all about your preference. Clothing storage. Maintaining a space for clean versus dirty clothing so that you can always grab something clean to wear when you need it. Oh, and also on a side note, hanging clothes versus folded clothes can be something to pay attention to as well. Toiletries, you want to know where they are, be able to get to them easily, but also keep them out of your way when you're not using them. Shoes and other accessories, and shoes can really take up a lot of space if you are intent on bringing a lot of shoe options with you. I am a girl who loves shoes, but I also really enjoy a minimalist lifestyle, so I kind of went with an in-between. I took several pairs of shoes, but they were mostly very functional shoes, and I was really careful about how I packed them. So you can take what you want, you just have to be mindful of how you organize it. Books, hobbies, games, etc. If those things are important to you, you'll want to find a good place for them. Food and beverage storage. It's a little bit easier for me because I tend to eat a lot of fresh food, plant-based foods that are in their natural packaging. So I don't need a cooler. I don't need a lot of space for my food, and usually I just pick it up right before I eat it. So I don't need a lot of food storage, but there are things. I do carry a very, very small camp stove with me. It's super minimal. It folds up actually to about this size. And occasionally I will cook something or heat something if it's really cold, like during the times right now. But generally speaking, it's fruit and salads. So it's a little bit easier for me. Trash, recycling, and compost. Now, again, not everybody will be concerned about this, although I highly encourage you to be mindful of it. And there are ways of dealing with this. It's here in Austin, there are tons of natural food groceries. So there are a lot of places to take your trash, recyclables, and compost, and that's generally what I do. I take all of mine to Whole Foods and deposit them there. But there are lots of places that you can go. You just need to look online to see where you can safely take them. And it's important to know how you're going to dispose of them when you're in the car if you are not immediately going to be taking them to be disposed of. So I keep a little trash bag in my car, and I have these hemp produce bags that I put compost in when I'm not directly at a compost disposal place. And recyclables I just keep in the floorboard until I can take them. Sleeping accoutrements, blankets and pillows, etc. It will depend upon your level of comfort need as to how many blankets or pads or sleeping bags or pillows you bring. Just make sure that you have a proper place to store them. Tech devices, you want to be sure that during the day when you're actually out in the world living, that they're not on full display for people. You just want to make sure that you're not creating a temptation for anyone with sticky fingers out there. And then anything else that is really important for you to have with you in your home. Anything that is sort of non-negotiable in your daily life. Just make sure that you have a good space for it and that you're considering it when you're planning your organization. Number 3. This kind of ties in with number 1. It's about finding good places to park overnight. Whether or not you were able to research this in advance, once you arrive in your location, it is very important to scout out possible places to park overnight. Even though you may have found a place that online or on paper sounded like it was going to be perfect, that doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect when you get there. It doesn't mean that it's going to be available when you get there. So it's really important to try to arrive someplace a little bit earlier during daylight hours, checking out your surroundings, finding out places that not only look safe but feel safe and comfortable. You can try parking lots or parking decks. Some of them require payment, some of them don't, some of them close overnight, some of them don't. Residential areas, but you do want to be mindful because some nosy neighbors can be aware of the fact that you might not be getting out of your car once you arrive, and that can be a red flag. So you do want to be mindful of residential areas. Campgrounds, of course, although some of them do require payment. Rest areas, some of them feel incredibly safe to me, some of them feel incredibly not so safe to me, so you want to be really careful about your choice of rest area if you do decide to stay there. But that said, I am a big fan of rest areas, and I try to stop at them whenever I can. As I'm traveling, I would just do some research before you decide to sleep there overnight. And then we talked about boondocking, so remote spots out in nature can be really great places to stay, but do some due diligence. Go there, check out the place yourself, see if there are any sketchy people hanging out, see if there are any signs of other life, whether that be human life or animal life, that might either negatively affect your experience or whose experience you might negatively affect, just to sort of be aware of what you're getting into before you choose your sleeping place. Number 4, create a daily or weekly routine. This may or may not apply to everyone, but it definitely has been helpful for me. And basically what I mean by this is figuring out your overnight parking rotations. Some people may be able to stay in the same place every night, and that's great, but there are some times where to at least be more stealthy, you're going to need to rotate your parking, so just sort of get your system of where you're going to go and when. Figuring out laundry day, fitness schedule, when you're going to get some movement in, if you're going to do that at the gym, if you're going to do that outside. A feeding schedule, like what your your situation is going to be, whether you're going to restaurants every day, whether you're going to grocery stores, what kind of food storage you need, things like that. Work schedule, if you are working, as I am, it's going to be helpful to know when you're going to be working. Social opportunities. I find that when I'm living in my car, it's simultaneously easier and harder to develop social interactions. And I am a huge introvert, so it's already really challenging for me, especially moving to a new place. But being that I'm living in my car, I am forced out into the world more regularly because I don't want to sit in the car all day. So I go to coffee shops, I go to the library, I go to grocery stores, I go to cafes, I go to different places where I can meet people. And I also take advantage of meetup.com, so I establish regular social interaction, which is really helpful for me. Again, may or may not be helpful for you. And then anything else that you do on a regular basis, just finding some kind of rhythm in your routine can be really helpful. Number 5, and number 5 is an extension of number 4, and basically it is all about locating your favorite daytime and evening hangouts. When first arriving in a place, you might not know where to go, and even if you have some ideas, it can be helpful to just get out in the world, get out in your new location and experiment. And once you find those places that feel really good for you and that you feel like you're able to get a little work done or really relax or meet new people or whatever it is that you're looking to do in those spaces, it can be nice to know that they're there and to know when during the day they are available, to know the busy times, to know the not so busy times. For some places that might be to know when they charge or when they don't charge, things like that. For me, coffee shops, co-working joints or co-working spaces, bookstores, grocery stores and cafes, library, and parks and other public spaces have been really, really helpful for me in finding places where I can exist comfortably out in the world when I'm not in the car. Number 6, and I find this one to be especially important, and it's also one that I didn't think of beforehand until it became an issue. Decide in advance, if you can, what you want to tell folks when they ask you where you live. Inevitably, somebody's going to ask you, and you might have different answers for different people. You might tell your friends one thing, you might tell dates something else, colleagues, because people will inevitably judge your decision. Some may judge it favorably, some may judge it with pity or sympathy, some may judge it with absolute disdain, some may judge it with neutrality, but they will still judge it in some way. We're humans, that's what we do. It can actually affect your ability to fully succeed in certain situations. It's unfortunate to have to say that, but that's just the truth, at least in my experience. So it's important to know how you want to answer that question and maybe practice it out a little bit. Come up with a couple of different options for how you want to handle those situations so that you're ready when they happen in real life. Number 7, have some contingency, emergency, backup options if things go awry. And a couple of the options that I sort of rely on are couch surfing, house sitting, shelters, camping equipment, and then hotels or Airbnbs. And hopefully you're not going to need to fall back on these things, but there can be times like freezing weather in a very warm location that you might not be totally prepared for. There may be floods coming through. You may find that your car needs to be in the shop for a little while. You never know what can come up. So it's important to just have some backup plans in place. And I'll try to put a couple of links down below as well on places that you can find some of these options. Number 8, and this is also going to be one that may not apply to everyone, but I thoroughly recommend simplifying your diet. I think it makes things so much easier. Now, what that means for me might be something totally different for you. For me, simplifying my diet is keeping it fresh, natural, plant-based fruits and vegetables, ready to eat as they are, as my primary staple foods. But what you might consider simplifying your diet might be only eating in restaurants or only eating at certain times of the day. It's really up to you how you interpret that, but getting really clear and simple with your diet can make things so much easier when you don't have a lot of personal space to hold your stuff. Number 9. And number 9 sort of hints back at number 6, and that is to get an official mailing address. A lot of people think that a P.O. box is a good official mailing address, but it's not. P.O. boxes are not accepted by a lot of official governmental organizations as actual mailing addresses. Plus, you have to have an actual residential address to be able to get a P.O. box, so that's generally not the way to go. There are a couple of different options out there. You can use a friend or family member's address, of course, if they're giving you permission to do so. You can go to UPS store or a mailboxes store that rent out mailboxes and have an actual physical address. You can, I think sometimes shelters can provide mailing addresses for people who don't have actual physical residences. Sometimes you can use your workplace address, but that's only, of course, if your workplace is amenable to that. And then there are other options online, like mail aggregate sites or apps. I think the one that I know of is Earth Class Mail, but there are probably tons of other ones out there. I haven't really looked super extensively in a while. So there are options. I would encourage you to do a little research to find out what's going to suit your needs the best. But you definitely will need an official mailing address if you're going to get a new driver's license or voter registration card or any of that kind of stuff. Then it can't be, again, a P.O. box. Number 10. And this one might just be the most important consideration on this list, and that is to determine your reasons for choosing this lifestyle. Get honest and clear with yourself when you're having this conversation or when you're trying to determine what your reasons are. Is it a choice? Is it a last resort? You don't have any other option? Is it something that you're doing to save money for a particular reason? Like for me, I'm doing it primarily because I want to get out of debt. I want to pay down my credit cards after traveling. So, it's a very personal matter, and only you can determine what your reasoning is. When you have discovered what your reason is, it's really helpful to be able to recall that reason when things are feeling not so great, because there will be moments where you're like, why the heck am I doing this? When you're feeling really cold or when you're starting to cramp up because you're not able to fully extend in your car, or when something breaks, or when you're having to replace a part on your car, whatever comes up, whatever life throws at you, there will be moments when you're wondering why you're doing this. And it's really helpful to have an authentic, well thought out answer for yourself. So that's it. Those are my top 10 tips, tools, life hacks for successfully, comfortably, safely living in your car. I hope that they were helpful for you. If you have other tips that you would like to add, I would love to hear them. Please leave them in the comments below. And if you have any questions or want to have a conversation about your experiences, then please get in touch. I'm always open to hearing what you guys have to say and what your experiences are. I think that helps to really enrich life when we get multiple perspectives from our own. So contact me if you want. My email address is down below. Feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to share this message. Always welcomed. And I hope that whatever your mode of living may be these days, that you're living blissfully and beautifully, and that life is treating you well. All right. Have a great day, Bliss Bunnies. Bye.